Lamont Bagby, House of Delegates member from Richmond. He has the old seat that Joe Morrissey had before he resigned that seat and then became a state senator. And he's also the chairman of the Legislative Black Caucus in Virginia of the House, and he and his 22 members signed a letter they sent to the governor the other day that I want to talk a little bit about. Lamont, great to have you with us.
Good morning, John.
Lamont, I read your letter. I actually talked to the governor's chief of staff about it. They were upset because they said they were blindsided by it. Their words, not mine, so I'm not really, don't want to focus on that. Not my deal. But I thought the letter was very strongly written. I just want to give you a chance to elaborate on it because it kind of took me aback. Because let me just read the one segment here. You said, under the current plan and with the already existing racial disparities that this pandemic and economic crisis are perpetuating, we'll be creating a situation where black and brown Virginians outside of Nova will become guinea pigs for our economy. Then you went on to say, we've already seen this take place in Georgia, where the state's premature reopening resulted in a spike in COVID-19 cases, with the overwhelming majority being black people and people of color. Throughout our country's history, you say, black and brown people have been experimented on and used as unwilling test subjects before. We cannot allow that to be repeated here. So you bring up guinea pigs, eugenics of the 1920s. It touches the cusp of genocide, perhaps. Do you think that wording was a little harsh?
Not at all, not at all. And I've been in communication with my good friend Clark and others from the administration, and I think I'm very confident that they understand that letter, while addressed to the governor, was speaking to all the Virginians. We wanted to make sure, and we didn't mince words, we wanted to make sure that our position was clear. Those individuals that will be forced to go back to work, not asked to go back to work, because there's a number of individuals that have an opportunity to go back to work, and they'll have a choice. For those individuals that will be forced to go back to work or lose their jobs, are individuals like custodians, individuals like receptionists, and buildings can't open without one of those two. And African Americans and people of color hold those jobs at a large rate. Also, we're looking at individuals that have been working throughout the entire pandemic that still don't have the resources that they need. And we look to the federal government to support us and help us with this. And we've gotten a little PPP here and there for some businesses. We've gotten some stimulus that I don't think was enough for the amount of time that individuals have been out. We have not had any direction or support as it relates to contact tracers for states. We haven't had any support for localities. There's so much that we need to questions that we need to answer, and I think the governor agrees. There's so many questions that we have to answer and things that we need to deploy, like contact tracers. And the governor has been doing an awesome job of finding resources to hire contact tracers and then deploy them, but they haven't been deployed yet. And so what we want to do is continue what we've seen start in what the governor started like in the city of Richmond with the pilot, but we need to let that pilot take shape, the deployment take shape, get a handle on our data sharing before we open our Commonwealth up. And so the letter may have been strong in its wording. It wasn't directed at the governor or who he is. I believe he's been I'm telling you, he's been a strong partner for us. As you know, we've been able to do more than many legislatures and governors have been able to do collectively in years with raising the minimum wage, cracking down on predatory lending, focusing on the criminal justice reform. He's been a partner for us, but we disagree on phase one. Phase one has already started, so that's pretty much water under the bridge now. But I'm confident that as we approach phase two, that we will be working stronger together.
Why not get back to work? I mean, we've got the original idea for shutting the production and the economy down was not to overrun our hospitals. They've not been overrun. Lamont, we have 5,000 open beds for COVID-19 in Virginia. We've got 18% of the ventilators
that's
are
the
in
thing,
use.
John. We have open beds. We don't want to fill them. We don't want to fill them.
Yeah, but they're not being filled. But they're not being filled. And the number of people, we had just under 1,000 people died in Virginia.
They'll be filled if we send people back into the.
Well, you don't know that. That's not happened. That's not happened.
PPE.
But Lamont,
we've seen other countries and other states where they open back up, and a couple of weeks later they have to close back down.
Well, Georgia, that's just inaccurate, Lamont. I mean, facts are facts. I mean, I respect your letter, but
there's been states countries that have had to go back and close down. Now we're months behind them, and we're trying the same thing that they tried, but we need to look to see what they've done. The other challenge is we're sending them back without PPE. We don't have the resources. We have localities that are telling their departments that you can't have.
Lamont, you're not dealing in reality. You're not dealing in reality, Lamont.
I'm giving you an example.
I was at Virginia Beach on Saturday. I ran into probably in 3 hours, my wife and I, in 4 hours, probably 3,000 people. You know how many people had masks on? Like 5. I mean, people just they're just not buying it anymore. I mean, I get what you're saying. And then they opened up Atlanta 3 weeks ago, and hospitalizations in Georgia after 3 weeks are down. I spent a week there. So I get the hyperbole, but the facts aren't there.
No, you said that 3,000 people were there, right?
Yes,
you
at
and
least.
Your wife went, right?
Yes.
That's your decision.
Yes.
I'm talking about individuals that aren't able to make that decision. We're making the decision for them, and we're not providing. And the other thing is, what the federal government is working on right now is liability protection for businesses, not liability protection for workers. Liability protection for businesses. So if I go to work, there are protections for my boss, my supervisor, my employer, that they won't have to pay me while I'm out. We're giving protection for the businesses, but nothing. We're doing nothing for the employee.
Well,
so you made a decision.
Employees can, but we have a free country. I mean, if you don't want to go to work, don't go to work. I mean, get it.
Man, that statement that you just made is. I mean,
but you want everybody to suffer. You want millions of small businesses to shut down and people to go out of business and go eat out of a trash can. It's basically what you're saying, because you don't have enough PPEs. I mean,
you're not going to eat out of a trash can, but I don't want people in trash cans, and I also don't want people in coffins.
The deaths in Virginia have slowed. The hospitalizations in Georgia have gone down since it's been open. I mean, that's a fact. You just can't argue with the numbers. So what you're saying, I mean, look, John, I'm sensitive to what you're saying, dude, but the numbers aren't there.
When the governor decided, absent the president giving any guidance or any directives and having the courage to close themselves, when the governor decided in March to shut down, we had far less deaths, far less individuals in hospitals, but he decided to shut down. There's nothing different now other than more deaths, more individuals in hospitals. We don't have a vaccine. We're not
going to have a vaccine. You can't shut the economy down until you have a vaccine. Nobody will be able to eat. I don't get what you're saying. This idea that you can't, you're going to shut the government down until we have a vaccine? There'll be no jobs left.
You're never going to let me finish.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
We don't have a vaccine. And we all know that we have to get economy back rolling before we have a vaccine. On this call, you haven't asked me when should we open.
When should we open?
I said we should open once the governor deploys the contact tracers, which he's already found the funding for. Once we roll out more PPE, once the Congress and the governor and the president sign this next rollout, once they figure out what they're going to do with the liability protection, then put those individuals back to work. And listen, the governor's just now getting a handle and understandably just getting a handle on the data. These things should only take a couple of weeks. Stick with the date that he put out initially and roll out then. That's only a couple more weeks. Let these things take shape.
Well, meantime, small businesses are going out of business and claiming bankruptcy by the hour. We got 35 million people unemployed. So I just have to ask you, do you want public schools to reopen in September, or do you want to keep them shut down?
So I'm not able to make or say whether or not I want public schools open right now or not. I think what we should do, instead of listening to Trump on this one, listen to Fauci. It's sad what he did to Fauci by being honest about this situation. We have time before now in September to figure out where this data is showing, see how these phases are going before we decide whether we're going to send our most vulnerable individuals. And what I mean by most vulnerable is they're not going to be able to social distance in classrooms. And so we have representatives from all of our households going into those classrooms and bringing those things back home and sharing it with the family. And, they're going to be playing on playgrounds, eating lunch together, being in close quarters together, holding hands, using the same restrooms. And so we need to be very careful before we send them back. And so I'm not prepared to say without more information. And again, we have time without more information on that.
You do realize, though, that another 6 months of this, and all these students are falling seriously behind academically. I mean, the majority of people in Virginia don't have high-speed internet. They don't have the access to what everybody has. So kids are falling behind. Companies are going bankrupt. I just don't know what it is that you want. Another $5 trillion in stimulus? Lamont, that's going to run out too. This is all going to run out.
Let me say this. Listen, and you have other guests, but let me say this. Some of the dollars, and this is a whole different conversation, some of the money that we're spending in stimulus, we don't need to spend. Some individuals, some of these businesses that are getting this money don't need it. Some people, and John, you might not want to say it, but some companies are making out like fat rats out of this. They're making more money. And we're giving them stimulus. We need to focus on the individuals that need it. There are small businesses out here that are struggling right now and probably won't open their doors back up and probably wouldn't have opened their doors back up a month ago. I mean, they're dying by the day, as you said. And we're giving these big businesses money. We're giving these businesses that are doing very well money. You got a report from a grocery store that got stimulus money, gave $400 to each employee, but then knocked their pay down $2 per hour. And these folks have been working throughout this entire pandemic.
Listen, I agree with you. I think the big businesses that raped this PPP fund, some of them have given the money back, but those are only a few that got called out on social media. I mean, that basically stole this money that was meant for small businesses that were trying to survive. I think that is one of the most shameful things in history. And in the second round of it, there was still no precautions put in. We had a lobbyist, as I reported on, when the PPP was getting negotiated. I reported on I was in D.C., and there were lobbyists with, $10,000 suits and $13,000 watches on, running around the Senate chambers like cockroaches, trying to get goodie bags for every one of their big bank clients. Then banks put big customers ahead of everybody else. So look, I agree with you on that. But I'm just saying, Lamont, I mean, I took your letter seriously. I really did. I took it seriously. I'm trying to think about it, and I respect you for sending it. But a lot of people are suffering, man. And this idea that we're just going to keep the economy shut down,
I agree.
it's
There's a lot of people suffering. There's a lot of people suffering. And we need to make sure that we take care of all of them. Every one of them. Because because none of these individuals are responsible for us getting into this mess. I think we all know who's responsible for us getting into this mess. And we'll deal with that in November.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think you are going to deal with it. Who's responsible is the Chinese Communist Party, and I don't think we're going to deal with that right now either. But I'm telling you, Lamont, people want to get their lives back. And these contact tracers that you're talking about, and I know you're a fan of them, you wait, Lamont, you wait until these contact tracers making $25 an hour on taxpayer dime starts banging on people's doors and demanding information for them in their homes. You just wait till that happens. I mean, this is still America. I mean, people do have certain civil liberties and freedom. And in Washington State, they're threatening if you have one bathroom and you've been exposed to somebody with this, they're going to take your children away and put them in defects. I mean, do you really think that's going to fly here?
Yeah, John, I appreciate you sharing that, but I just don't believe that.
I mean, that's what Governor Jay Inslee said.
Yeah, I can't imagine someone taking their children away.
That's what they said. I'm just telling you what they said.
I've talked to you about what I think we need to be focused on and how we can get back to work in a couple of weeks and then start moving back to some type of normalcy and what it takes for us to put our children back into the classroom. And praying that the federal government will finally step up.
Okay, so let's take Richmond, all right, which is shut down for 2 weeks, which is what you want, right? So for you to send a letter to LeVar Stoney saying, hey, Mr. Mayor, time to open Richmond, what do you want to see that you're not seeing now?
I feel like I told you a couple of minutes ago, but deploying the contact tracers, finally getting a handle on the data, because the data that's been rolling out from the Commonwealth hasn't been disaggregated in a fashion that I think is acceptable to the governor, and so he has his team working on that. We need to make sure that we have more PPE available. A couple of weeks ago we were struggling to have PPE available just in the hospitals, but we need to make sure that we have what we need available for the balance of the public and in businesses. We also need to finally start asking critical questions to the localities, our cities and counties, on how they plan to protect their staff in respective departments, and not just firefighters, police officers, and first responders, but also their custodial workers, the individuals that work on their vehicles. There are a number of individuals that will be exposed with the opening. That again, in Virginia Beach, there's someone cleaning up that beach after you all had fun this weekend. There's teams of individuals out right now doing that, and so we have a number of things that we can do, and I think we could do in quick fashion if we're focused on that. And we know what the goal is, and so those are some of the things that I think we need to be prepared to do. And then again, like I said, looking at the federal government, they have two pieces of legislation that I'm watching. One is focused on the liability and who's liable if a worker contacts the virus, and then the second thing is more PPP for for small businesses that need it, and reassuring that those individuals that are unemployed receive compensation.
Well, the unemployed are getting compensation, I think, through August, if I'm not mistaken, the additional $600 a week. So I don't think that has to be dealt with right now. We're only in May. But let me just ask you something, Lamont.
Yeah, hold on. John,
Go ahead.
I'm not getting into your personal business, but could you survive off $600 a week?
Well, it's actually $900 because you get $330 from the state of Virginia, so it's $930 a week. Look, I don't want people to get unemployment. I want to put them back to work. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm on the exact opposite.
That's the
I
thing.
I don't want anybody
that's the
on
whole
unemployment.
point,
I want them to get a job, and they
That's
can't
the
get a
whole
job.
point.
But let me
John,
just ask you something.
A couple things. First, compensation again. It's a couple of things that we're talking about, our underlying issues that we can have our own segment on, and how we pay workers in the Commonwealth and America as a whole is a conversation in its own. But when you have a flat rate, and some individuals in D.C. on one side of the aisle, they're making an argument that workers are making more than what they would have been making if they were working. So why would they go back to work? Fair question. But there are workers that are making less, and they figured out how to keep food on the table with less. And they're saying to us, I'm going to take less so I can keep my family safe. Now, let me say this. When we first started, when the governor first made the announcement, we had his back. And what the biggest question we were hearing or concern we were hearing from barbershops, hair salons, small businesses, and churches. And they were saying, don't shut us down. We can't afford to be shut down. Then they realized how serious this was and how the federal government had failed us. So then they said, now they're saying, don't open us back up. It's not ready. And they're saying that because of the things that I just outlined. And they will be going back without guidance. You know who has the best guidance right now? Better than the CDC right now? McDonald's. McDonald's has the best guidance. Mm-hmm. Their guidance that they laid out for their employees is solid. We don't have that guidance for all these other industries and all these other businesses that are about to open up or that have opened up. People haven't thought this through. They don't have those individuals in their office to think those things through. These are people with a good idea, small businesses with a good idea, but they need the resource and the guidelines to accomplish this. We're not saying don't open up.
Don't you look?
We're hurting to open back up. We're ready.
Lamont Bagby with us. Lamont Bagby, House of Delegates member, also the chairman of the Legislative Black Caucus in Virginia. 22 members, Lamont, or 23? I don't remember. Something like that. 22 members. Two things. Number one, don't you trust Virginians to make up their own decisions about when to open their business, when not, and how to do it? I mean, and the second thing is, if what you say is true, then why aren't there more clerks sick at Walmart? Like, how did Walmart stay open? Because they're coming into contact with thousands of people a day, pretty up close. Why isn't the entire Walmart network in the United States sick in the hospital? Just answer me those two questions.
Again, I've said that these larger companies have figured this out. They've done a fine job of putting guidelines out for their employees. If you go in Walmart, you'll notice that they have far more employees. Far less employees and far more self-serve lines. You don't see any managers just rolling around. You don't see extra people walking around. I went in Lowe's the other day, and I talked to the gentleman that I usually speak to there, and I said, hey, listen, I need a screw. He helped me find the screw, and then he said, hey, man, I'm sorry it took me so long to help you. We're short on staff. And the reason why they're short on staff is some of them have been quarantined and have to be set aside for 14 days because they've gotten sick. So we can't say that they haven't lost individuals. A lot of these people are short on staff in these department store in these box stores. If you notice, and they're doing the best they can. And in the Richmond area, we have had individuals in grocery stores get sick. We've had individuals that work in grocery stores die. That's a fact.
Don't you trust Virginians to do the right thing, Lamont?
I trust Virginians to do the right thing. I do trust them, and I trust the Virginians that are calling me and saying, let's slow this train down. Make sure you all put in place what we need to have in place before we open this thing back up. And I also trust that they need the support to continue to do the right thing. And Virginians have been doing the right thing. I know that they are anxious to get back to work, especially those individuals. I have individuals in my family, immediate family, that have been wishing and wanting to go back to work, ready to go back to work, waiting for their supervisor to call them and say, come back to work. And that's not because of anything but wanting to make an honest living and wanting to make sure that you're contributing. But this is one of the first times in the history of not only the Commonwealth but of the nation that the best thing you can do, and doctors have been saying, the individuals that we trust to keep us safe, nurses have been posting it over and over and over again, those messages on social media and on the TV. Stay at home. This is the first time that the best thing you can do is stay at home.
I don't think the number's back yet. I mean, I get what you're saying. I appreciate the caution. Took your letters seriously. I take you seriously. We're friends. I don't think you're on the right side of this, and I don't think you're in the majority, and I think people are done with it. And they look at the numbers. Hospitalizations are down. That's why we shut the economy down. Hospitalizations are down. The number of beds are available are up. The number of deaths under 50 are infinitesimal. In Virginia, 3/5 of people died were over the age of 80 with underlying conditions. It's all bad. And this is a serious thing. But I'm telling you, this idea that we are just going to, in perpetuity, stay shuttered at home while businesses are collapsing and people have no money, I think it's done. I think it's over.
We're not going to just stay shut. We're not going to just stay at home. The governor is moving forward with phasing this out and getting people back to work. That letter was just the outline that we thought phase one was too soon. We felt like it should have been a couple more weeks.
I respect your letter.
We're past that now, and so we'll continue to work with the governor as we look at phase two and the next phases to come. I am so grateful that we have a doctor as our governor right now to protect us from the ill-advised administration on the federal level.
Lamont, look, we're friends. We've been friends a long time.
We are.
I respect you. I respect what you have to say. I respect your judgment. I totally respect the letter you sent.
And I appreciate when we have these conversations, whether public or private, because it helps us process some things and look at other ways of thinking about it. And I think oftentimes causes us to behave differently and in a positive fashion. So always a pleasure speaking with you. And I hope the way that you and I dialogue is the way that individuals will dialogue about not only this, but issues that impact the Commonwealth day in and day out. And so always a pleasure.
Well, Lamont, we set the example for how to have good dialogue, good conversation. We can disagree, that's fine. But I still have your Lamont Bagby for delegate button in my office. Just want you to know that. Thanks for being with us.